Welcome to the Venly Expert Talks, where we aim to inspire Web3 builders with great stories from great minds. I'm your host, Alexandra Ahrens, and I'd like to remind you that you can always reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, or LinkedIn with ideas for the podcast and questions for our guests. Welcome to episode 21 of the Venly Expert Talks. Today I'm joined by Dirk Lueth, co-founder and co-CEO at Upland. And we are going to discuss what it means to navigate the metaverse and its limitless business possibilities. So welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, thank you for having me here, right? I'm super excited to be on the podcast.
Great. Thanks. Great. So I want to just start out with talking about you, your background in life, in crypto, and yeah.
Okay, so where do I start? Yeah, so maybe I start with something which has actually really, influenced my life. Is when I was studying, I was always quite, entrepreneurial. I started with 16 at high school. I started, the first newspaper in a certain sense, right? So I was always it was one piece of my life, and the other piece of my life was while I was studying. I got really fascinated, about everything what relates to currency. So it actually had its climax, let's say, like this, when I actually also did a PhD about private and state-controlled currencies. And that was, a long, long time ago. And when I finished that, I always said, okay, I'm never going to use that again because, it's just academic work, right? We're going to have one currency. There was a little new thing at that time, right? The euro came along in Europe, right? Because we had, separate currencies before there. And, long story short is, and then, one day I saw Bitcoin, but we come to that probably a little bit later. And we super got excited because I said, oh, now I can use my academic work again. And it was really good. So, but back to my life, after school and the PhD, I actually started a company, Financial Times of Germany, a newspaper. And a little bit later, I started another company in the fintech space. And then in 2009, I decided, okay, I want to really go where lots of innovation is done. And I moved from Germany with my family to Silicon Valley. And and then that's when I actually basically discovered Bitcoin early in 2010 already. So, and then, but that's when I first heard about it. But I really started getting my head around everything, and also worked on a platform, right, which also solved double spending and so on. Starting in 2011. But during that time also, because as I said, the other bug I always had was the entrepreneurial bug, starting companies, but also helping companies. So I became mentor for over 30 startups here in the US, especially coming from Europe, to help them to enter the US market or raise capital and whatever they needed, right? So, and some of them, succeeded, was one became a unicorn, and then, and others, they did not succeed, but that's just startup life.
Yeah. Great. Very, very involved. And you've done definitely a lot of things. Very cool. So, yeah, then I guess let's go straight into Upland, what your current project is. Can you tell us about the vision behind that, how that got started?
Yeah, so as I said, I got really early involved with decentralized ledger technologies. There was only Bitcoin around back in 2010, 2011, right? So no one was really, and that's why at that time we always said, okay, it's great as a currency, right? Then I was still, because back to my academic work, I said, oh, it's really going to be the currency everyone's going to use. The governments are going to allow that. So all that stuff, right? Which going through my head, I said, okay, but the technology itself is so great, right? That's, when you couldn't, this decentralized, what do we call today transfer of ownership, right? In 2011, 2012, I said, okay, when you can do that. And actually, Ethereum came around, and actually they were quite fast at that time, right? They came up with the first programmable, blockchain where you can put, apps on top of it. And, but I always thought, okay, everything's so much on the protocol level, right? It's not really for the end users. And then back in 2018, Idan Zuckerman and Manny Honigstein, who were two friends of mine, they're also living here in Silicon Valley. We sat together playing Monopoly with a game night, right, with friends. and I told them, blockchain, big thing and so on. They actually were in the gaming space. Yeah, and we looked at the game the game board and say, hey, why don't we take the idea of Monopoly, right? bring that on the blockchain. And there was actually the other part of the story, and use the real world to it. And why we said why using the real world is because we were influenced at that time. Also, there was a Netflix series called Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. And that was actually a parallel world. It was a little bit of monsters and so on, but it was actually fascinating. Saying, "Oh, maybe there's a parallel world." That's how we came up with that's how the idea was born, and that's how Upland was started. Right? So to monopoly, inspiration, real world, and then blockchain, and then we incorporated quite early, and we also had we actually called our URL upland.me. Right, for metaverse back in 2018 already, when no one was talking about it, right? So that was kind of funny, all because we said, okay, metaverse, because there's a parallel world, is a metaverse. We always said that, and knowing Snow Crash and Ready Player One and so on. And at the beginning, we always avoided that because we said, no one knows what metaverse is, right? I just said, okay, instead of doing .com, which was taken anyway, so I said, why don't we use just ME then, because it fits perfectly. Mm-hmm. And but we did not use that in our marketing at the beginning, right? But that turned quickly. It's the same with NFTs, right? We were avoiding the word NFTs, and that's a little bit the mission which we are on with Upland. Because I said, okay, blockchain is super complicated, right? So the average users, they don't want to deal with private keys, passphrases. They actually want to call someone when they lose their password, right? It's just, and by the way, it happened to me. I also lost some stuff, and it was just gone forever, right? Maybe I find it one day again, but that's really the problem, right? And it's okay when we set out and do Upland, we really want to make it suitable for mass market, and that's tricky, right? With the given technology stack which you have. But when you look into Upland today, it's super easy to sign in. You only need the email and the password, and we accept actually fiat currency to purchase our in-app currency, which is called Apex, with a credit card and PayPal. You can also use crypto to purchase it, and that's the other part where we, ready for the mass market. We also said mobile first. So we are available on iOS and Android, right? So that's also where you can use those payment mechanisms of the app stores, but as well as, it makes it much more accessible for, let's say, the average user.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So great. In that case, I do want to really quickly ask, how have you found adoption and your growth situation because of those?
Yeah, so the advantages also, when you come from the traditional gaming space, right, and when you think Web3, how do you acquire users, right? We actually always did a mix of it, right? Web3, you acquire usually, let's say, the crypto aficionados, I tend to call them, right? People who are really into it, and they want to try out things and so on. So those people we found through certain channels which were successful for us. I can give an example. We're famous for our Brave ads, for instance. Brave is a privacy browser, mm-hmm. and it's like works a little bit like Chrome, and people saw our ads there, and then they came in, and we had a lot of word of mouth. Of course, we did PR, so that's how users came in. And we were also able to do Facebook ads, for instance, or Google ads, because the way we built the app, and also the way we built the app, allowed us to be on the app stores. And this is actually where we can proudly say today. So we did just a survey, a few days back, and with a big user group and of our existing users, and we asked them, do you own NFTs outside of Upland? And actually 65% said they don't, right? Okay. Which is actually, shows some kind of success for us, right? Because we were able to onboard users who are, let's say, those normies, those average players.
Yeah, that's quite an accomplishment for sure. You always knew that this was going to be built on blockchain. That was a huge part of it. How did you go about choosing your blockchain? Was that of high importance to you, or?
Yeah, so when you think about when we started out in 2018, there were not lots of blockchains weren't around which are here today, right? Like Avalanche, Solana, and so on, right? At that time, we always said we looked very deeply into Ethereum, right? But we had concerns. First of all, because we are also a big piece of our value proposition. We say always rebuild the world, and that's our mantra, right? And part of that is, the whole idea about sustainability, right? I was always skeptical about the energy consumption of Ethereum and Bitcoin. That's what, I'm a Bitcoin and blockchain and Ethereum fan, but however, right, that's actually a downside, right? It's so much using so much energy. So that was one of the reasons, okay, is there other ways of doing this? Is technically speaking, is a delegated proof of stake, which consume way less energy. And we looked around which blockchains are available. And what we wanted to do is also what we also said, what's not working is when users have to pay for every transaction a gas fee, right? That's just not working, because we want to have a freemium model and in Upland. And people can try it out and they don't have to pay. They can do stuff and so on, right? No, they don't have to pay blockchain fees, and so on. So Ethereum was unfortunately, not a go for us. And, Polygon was not available at the time and all that stuff. So we decided then to go on EOS, right? Because we always also to do everything we do with, the email sign up and so on. That was all technical possible only with EOS during that time. And that's why we, decided to go with EOS, which is actually for us works very well as a blockchain, right? So, for instance, when we open up new cities, we have a very high demand of users coming in, and we have 300 transactions per second, sometimes, which is huge, right?
Very, yeah. So, leading me into my next question, then obviously this past year, 2021, was really big statistically for blockchain gaming. How did that affect Upland, and were there any key updates that had to be made in response?
In updates in terms of sorry, go.
Yeah, so let's take it one at a time. So how did you see significant growth in 2021?
Oh yeah, sorry, I caught it wrong direction. Yeah, absolutely.
No,
yeah. So we saw extremely growth, right? So we went up to in December, I think, to 150,000 daily active users, right? Which is obviously one of the largest in all blockchain apps out there, and so that was quite significant growth, right? And this growth came actually interestingly also from the overall hype of NFTs, of metaverse. It's just, of course, we did also advertising, continuing doing this, but I think also because of everything that happened in the space in general.
Yeah, good. So then that goes into the second part of the question then. So were there any updates to the structure or how things work in Upland because of the growth?
Well, we have to cope with the increasing demand, right? Especially when we open up cities, right? And I don't want to hide at the beginning, so was all blockchain applications have, right? We had some issues, right, at the beginning when the demand was increasing way faster than we expected ourselves. So we had to correct that. But right now we just launched Queens, this week in new city. Because currently we're live, I think, 19 cities in the US. And that went super smooth, right? Because the problem is when you're in blockchain, right? It's not like traditional IT, right? In traditional IT, you can go and we have a problem, you Google it, and then 10 other people have the problem and you solve it, right? Now you Google it and there's a void. There's nothing there, right? So you have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Then I want to talk about UPX or UPX, how you called it before, the internal token that you have. Why did you choose to keep it as an internal token? Do you see that changing in the future?
So first of all, we are a US-based company, and we have very strict regulations over here, right? Some stuff is not well defined, but we always wanted to be on the safe side, right? Also, one of the reasons that when we go to the app stores, right, and for Facebook ads and so on, it's tricky when you have an external token. So that's the reason. The way it works in Upland is we have UPX, which is a fixed rate. So $1 gives you 1,000 UPX, and you can purchase that with fiat, also with crypto, right? And then use that UPX to purchase NFTs in Upland. And we have, we can sell we can buy virtual property with it. You can sell with a partnership with the NFL Player Association, so you can buy NFTs of football players. We have, we had something going on with Spirit Halloween, and there's a lot of other partnerships that are coming on, interesting NFTs coming on. So overall, we sold 2.5 million NFTs so far. And the way users then extract monetary value out of Upland, right, besides the entertainment value they're getting, is that they can sell NFTs also for US dollars. And that's part of our value proposition. Our value proposition is we want to create the entrepreneurial metaverse. That means people can go there and create and operate shops, right? So now I just mentioned the NFLPA. Maybe you purchase some of those NFTs, and now you run your fan shop, and users can go there and buy NFTs from the NFL players. And you can sell those for US dollars. You have to do KYC for that. That's regulations in the US, but that's how we currently handle it. To your questions, are we going to do something external? Yeah, of course, we're always looking into it, right? What can we do here? Because we know it's super important for community building and so on. Believe me, I'm talking to lots of lawyers, and let's see how that goes. I cannot do any official announcement at this point.
Sure, of course. Good. You just mentioned some of your partnerships there with Spirit and NFL and things. How do you go about choosing or finding those kind of partnerships?
Yeah, for us, it's super important that we want to you provide utility to our users, right? It's not just purchase something, then there's a drop, right? And then then why should users care, right? They should be able to do something. That's what the metaverse is about. It you do something with it. You own something and you do something with it, right? And then in Upland we always say we want to have every NFT, it should somehow have it should be somehow be gamified. It should have a context, and it should be geolocated because we're based on the real world. So to give you one example, let's stick with the NFL Player Association here right now. What you can do is you can go and purchase actually what we call essentials, or we call so let's say the main the umbrella brand is Legits. These are NFTs, like a virtual jersey or like a football or something, of a season. You can buy that, right? And when you buy that, you start, that counts towards your fan score, right? And so that is somehow gamified. You can trade that and so on. And now you can go on the day of the game. That's the context, right? The game. You go into the virtual stadium, and the higher your fan score is, the more you stand in front of the line, right? So that's then, the stadiums and the geolocation, of course. And now, because now you stand in front of the line, and then now you can pick, and you don't know yet what is going to be, a great NFT, right? But let's say you pick the jersey of, let's say everyone knows him because he's back now, Tom Brady, right? Or whatever. Yeah. You pick that, right? And then, right, before the game, actually. Yeah, and then Tom Brady scores a super touchdown or whatever, right? Or throws a good pass, right? In this case, right? And then, then his jersey becomes much more worth because it's commemorated to that day, and so on. People love that, right? You don't know it at the beginning, right? But then you actually, when you were in front of line, you purchase it before, and then the NFT is delivered, a few days after, right? It was pretty cool, actually, right? So then people get super excited about it. They put that maybe in their store, or maybe they just brag it that they have it, and so on. And that's collector's items. But that's the way we see and how we putting NFTs into our metaverse. And with that, we always look into, we're currently saying we're focusing on certain, sectors. However, we're always open to others. But right now we're looking at sports and entertainment brands. We're looking for retail and e-commerce because obviously, since we're based on the real world, there's a lot of stuff you can mix also with the real world in the future, right? And last but not least is everything mobility. So we just announced that we're going to introduce cars, right? And we will soon announce, car brands we're working with also.
Okay, well, good. Thanks for spilling a little bit there. Good. So moving into more of the general topic here. With business opportunities, what industries do you think have the biggest impact right away or right now?
So I think the biggest impact right now have the sports and entertainment, because when you think about it, Web3 is all about community, and community is very close to fandom. Yeah, when you so that's a natural thing, right? When you say, hey, you already have a fans, now you engage them, now you give them some more stuff for what they adore, what they want to have, right? When you're a famous musician or so, right? It's now you can give them an NFT of your microphone you've used, at a famous concert, I don't know, something like that. So that's what fans love, right? And I think that's a very natural combination, and we see that also with the NFL and others. It's also what you see right now is all the celebrities, all clubs, and they're all moving into the metaverse. It's a little bit harder when you let's say, I mean, right now, as I mentioned, when it has to be close to the utility function. When I earlier mentioned, right, mobility cars makes sense, right? In Upland, we mimic actually the real world. You cannot go just from San Francisco to New York by beaming yourself. You actually have to take a plane from San Francisco airport to JFK, right? And it takes you 20 minutes. Yeah, or you have to take a Hyperloop. We have a partnership Hyperloop between Cleveland and Chicago. Right. So, and with cars, right? So let's say you want to go, one day to we open up, it's not open yet, but something Lake Tahoe, which is near here, San Francisco. Maybe you have to have a car for that. That's the only way to get there. Or you need to, we want to fire up a car racing in the streets of San Francisco. That's also what we're planning. Community can drive that, right? So that's where you need a car. So that's a utility function. But when you're a CPG, it gets harder, right? To, let's say, or when you a beverage company, right? What do you do actually there, right? So, but you have to become creative, right? Let's say, maybe you drink a certain drink, right? I mean, don't want to advertise any special here, but let's say it's a sports drink, right? You drink it, and then maybe you get some kind of superpower for a limited of time, right? So you have to become, you have to see how you combine those things together, right? So some stuff, but as you can see, it's much more natural with the fans from the celebrities than the superpowers, where you have to come up with something, which is not maybe very natural. But they also have to be very careful as a brand, not to dilute your brand in the sense of, that people say, okay, this doesn't fit for the real world and has a negative impact then on the real world.
Yeah. So you have to find that good cross of utility and fitting in with the vision, the whole vision of the business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Can you, maybe without giving too much free advertising, give some good examples of businesses leveraging Web3 to what you believe is the fullest potential? You can advertise if you want.
Yeah, so there's also Web3 and metaverse, right? I mean, Upland is part of the metaverse. I always say there's only one metaverse, by the way, and it's one universe, one internet, right? And we're part of the metaverse. Anyways.
Okay, no, wait, we're going to stick on that for a second. We can come back to the other thing. Talk about that.
No, it's the metaverse, and we also strictly believe in the open metaverse, right? We want to collaborate with the other parts of the metaverse, and it's not always easy. People always have the buzzword interoperability, right? And, but man, it's not really working, right? When you let's say when you're give you one example, because I know him quite well, Sebastian from Sandbox, right? So when we now would when we would now collaborate, their visuals look completely different than ours. Yeah. So first of all, when you want to, let's say, hey, you have a certain character in his game, and now you want to bring it to Upland. He would like to bring it in Upland. Not saying we're doing it. I'm just saying theory. Yeah. But he would do that. And, it has to be somehow be translated into our visual representation. That's one thing. The other thing is maybe his characters have a special, feature, like maybe there's a sword, right, which is super strong, right? Will it have the same, capabilities in Upland? So that's all the detailed questions. It's, interoperability sounds great, but when you look into, the details, it's tricky. And then to your question is Web3 and metaverse and so on. I think, it's still very much everywhere in the experimentation phase. I tend to say there's none where I say, hey, this is, a killer, right? Right now, everyone extending his or her brand into the metaverse in a certain sense, right? Of course, the crypto native brands, they're super successful when you think about CryptoPunks and so on, right? But this is a very unique collector's items to my mind, right? I don't think we're there yet where we say, hey, this is really, an old, let's say traditional brand who is super successful. I mean, maybe there's something out there which I'm not aware of, where the traditional brand would say, you know what, we're going to focus, let's say 80% of our resources now on all that because, our old world doesn't work anymore. I'm not aware of an example, to be honest. I think we'll hear of those examples probably next 2 to 3 years. And some brands will maybe shift a little bit, also the way they do things. But that's just too early at the moment.
Okay. Then what are maybe some tactics you would tell businesses to avoid when getting into the space?
So, you say businesses, you mean basically brands, right? To come in.
Brands mostly, yeah.
Yeah. So big brands. So what I would like, the advice I always give is, first of all, don't try to copy your competition, right? Because you have to be, aware that they're also trying out things. They also don't know if the things are working or not. So internally you should never copy your competition, right? That's anyways, but that's something. And you should try out things. That's of course the biggest advice, right? So to maybe in certain areas of the metaverse or certain maybe see how things work. And I've spoken to many brands now, right? And some say, we had a successful drop, but then we did another thing. Just yesterday, I talked to a very big car brand, right? I said the other one was not working at all, right? So even though they have a very strong brand asset, right? But it's just still did not work, right? And you have to be aware of it. Also, when you're a brand, and let's say when you are, when you're running marketing somewhere and you see old projects, we have to do something in the metaverse, and then you do just something arbitrary, right? And then you say, hey, I did this, right? And, it doesn't serve the purpose really, right? So I think what is very important is look at the native brands, the Web3 native brands, which are there. I mentioned CryptoPunks and you have a couple of others, right? How are they doing it? Since all, when you think about it, it's all about the community. And that's something where brands have to start thinking differently. Because, where today or traditional brands were always very protective of, how people can use their brands, right? But I think you have to start thinking more openly how you can involve your community, right, to use parts of your brand, because they are going to be your biggest and largest advertisers. So maybe you have a design contest where you allow to use your logo in a certain way, right? But things like that, right? So, then because it's just, this is what the Web3 and metaverse is about. It's all about creativity, to tapping into the, it's not like in the old days where you broadcasted your marketing messages out, or on social media where you somehow engaged a little bit. Right now, it's the true interaction, and that's you have to embrace as a brand in order to succeed, and try out lots of things with smaller groups and so on.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, very interesting. What I guess would be your advice on kind of building that community then? So obviously, once you have the community, you want to kind of utilize them for that marketing, as you were saying. But how do you get there, I guess?
Yeah. So first of all, don't do the same mistake like in the social media days where I said, oh, we have an intern, let him do the Twitter stuff or so, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to embrace it. I think it has to be, on the agenda of the head of marketing or even the CEO to understand that, right? Because this is the future customers. And so for instance, at Upland, right? I think our first hire, after we had, the core, 5 developers and the founders, was actually a community manager, right? So it was super important for us. We say, okay, we really want to do that. And that's what you have to embrace. And it's a certain skill. It's not that easy. And so that's the first thing. Then second thing is also the kind of people you're going to hire. They might not have the typical straight CV coming out of a business school and so on. These are people who are super creative, who are immersed always in communities, playing games and so on. So, so maybe be open to hire different types of skill sets and experiences. Then the third is that maybe you have to do some research. Maybe you already have somewhere a community, right? Maybe there's a small Facebook group. Maybe you can try to move them to maybe Discord. I don't know. So that's what we have to look into and see, okay, is there a nucleus where you can get started? If you don't have that, and try to build a community, what I just mentioned, maybe do small competition. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You do a small competition where, people can win some prizes and so on, but you're engaging with your users much more, right? And you're trying to create some hype, but don't do everything top down, right? Say, hey, we want to listen to you. What are your ideas, right? And get them really involved.
Okay, awesome. What do you feel is the biggest hurdle for brands to get into Web3 at this point?
So first of all, because they don't know why most of the time, right? So that's a thing, right? And it's so new. Mm-hmm. So that's where there's no way of measuring success really at this point, right? When you think about traditional marketing, TV, you had the ratings and all that stuff, right? Where you could get that. And in social media, you had ROAS, right? You would spend money and then how much you're returning. As ROAS stands for return on ad spend, right? Mm-hmm. But now you're on the metaverse or Web3. So how do you measure it? What are the standards, or how do you compare it, right? So that's of course that's the first thing. So you need to be ready just to invest and maybe lose the money. You have to get some kind of a startup thinking into it, right? You start something and you embrace failure and then move on to the next one if something hasn't worked. So, and that's probably not in the DNA, back to your question, right? In lots of companies, when you're a large corporation, you're not really, in the mindset of saying, oh, it was a failure, let's move on to the next thing, right? Because the person who was responsible for the failure might, risk his career, right? And but that's the only way how you can embrace it. And so the leadership has to say, look, we're starting with that. I'm dedicating whatever budget to it. If we lose the money, okay, that's tough. I mean, that doesn't give you, carte blanche to do anything you want, of course. Right. But we know we're experimenting here, and let's see, maybe but we need to learn and understand, how things are working.
Mm-hmm. Would you say then that maybe newer, smaller, traditional style businesses are more uniquely positioned to get into Web3 than bigger corporations and well-known brands?
I think it depends on the leadership a little, because also a small corporation can be quite rigid and not really move fast and change things, right? So I think the ones who's going to be successful is really who embracing first, they understand their brand and how can they extend their brand to other things, and who are willing to experiment, right? So I think that's going to be a very important leadership skill in the future, which you normally find with startup founders, right? And people who are, but I think big companies also have to start thinking much more. They started doing this anyways because we had this wave of startup thinking the last 10 years, but now it's getting even more because now we have also some new media type, right, which supports that thinking as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you give me a few examples, maybe, of some kind of business-related capabilities of Web3 that you can see, but you don't think have been really explored yet?
Okay, that's a tough question. So, I think what is not really explored is the whole idea about, I call that as a buzzword a little bit, phygital. Yeah. Okay. So when you're a traditional brand, a retailer or something, right? So maybe you want to mix the real world with the virtual world. So phygital stands for physical and digital. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's not really explored, but I think this is a huge, huge, huge potential going forward, right? Where people do stuff maybe in the real world. Yeah, they purchase maybe a digital good because they purchase it. Just run you through one case here. Then you have maybe QR code on it, right? So people are scanning that in because now they scanned it in. Now they get a special NFT in a metaverse, all right? And now they can, use that NFT to complete the mission. Because they completed the mission, they can go back to the store or to another store or something, and now they get a new product, right? Because or a product they can only get, and that's important because Web3 is always all about scarcity. You have to really play that very carefully, right? but they can only get it because they completed that mission, right? So, and that is of course, let's say when where Web3 really shines a lot, because people are taking over ownership in the metaverse of something, and then they can use that ownership, right, to get something else.
Okay. It's interesting. I don't know why, but when you said that, I was picturing just gamification mixed with grocery shopping. And so you buy the peanut butter, you get it, and then you get to go back and get your jelly. I don't know.
No, exactly. But honestly, that's how I expect it's going to happen. So first of all, once we have the technology, especially augmented reality glasses, right? So, like we're telling our kids right now, sometimes, hey, put down your phone, don't look at it, don't do that all the time. I think they will tell their kids, put down your glasses, right? Don't look through your glasses all the time, because the world's going to be enhanced by augmented reality, and the shopping experience is going to be completely different. I saw actually a video, actually a few years back already, was actually quite a visionary video creator who did that. So. So you go into a store, right? You have your shopping cart at a physical store. You go in there, and then you put some stuff into it, right? You see you see the package, and then you see, okay, there's a special discount or something, and maybe because you have a small mission, right? And then to complete whatever you have in your cart, right? To give you extra points somewhere else, right? I mean, there was no game behind it, but he visualized it, and I really like that approach, right? And I think that's exactly when you think about the younger generation, they always, they are growing up with games now. And actually, they're going to expect things like that in the future. Yeah, so that's going to be very exciting to see.
Very interesting. Okay, can you walk me through some of the specific benefits and drawbacks that you can see for those old school fiat businesses to add in a blockchain Web3 component?
Well, it's always friction, right? As long as, especially when you're fiat business and you're introducing now blockchain-based payments, right? It's not that we have a clear standard. Actually, I saw yesterday by chance I saw that on television. In El Salvador, they introduced Bitcoin as a currency, right? As a legal tender, right? And the reporters went through the streets and said, "Hey, do you take Bitcoin?" Right? I think they actually asked 20 vendors, and no one was actually taking it. It's maybe too early, but actually the 21st or whatever. He then said, "Yeah, I take it." Right? That was really funny, right? And he was paying his food with Bitcoin there, right? I mean, it was still kind of cumbersome because they had some app on the phones, but it took 20 minutes or so to confirm. So he had to wait for his food just to confirm the payment for 20 minutes. But once those hurdles are overcome, right, and everything is smooth. I think I clearly see that's going to replace credit card payments and so on, in the future. Because one big advantage you have with when it goes to that is credit card payments. They always, there's always fraud involved, unfortunately, right? And but with blockchain-based payment, you don't have that. Either you have it in your wallet and you give it to someone, or you don't, right? And so it's actually much more superior when you think about payments, right? It's not user-friendly at the moment, but when this is going to happen, we're going to see a huge amount of payments coming in. Will the governments do something about it? Because there might be some scams, and so let's see, right? So that's another question.
Mm-hmm. We've talked a little bit about some of the visions for the space. Obviously, some of them might be a little bit further out than others. Where do you see the space in 5 years' time? What aspects do you think have survived and thrived, and what aspects do you think have kind of been forgotten?
So, like all technology, it's going to become our everyday part of our life, right? I mean, when the internet came around, it was exactly the same thing. So I saw that at that time, people were talking more about the technology and so on. But then we got an everyday, now everyone's using it. The same thing is going to happen with Web3 technologies, right? It's just going to be part of our everyday life with new use cases, with new benefits, and so on. And when it comes to the metaverse, I always say, it's going to be like people that say, where do I see Upland? I always say it's going to be your daily companion, right? So you do something, you don't really feel it. It's just an extension of your everyday's life. You go there, to get entertainment, to play some stuff. You go there to earn money. Right. So, because already today we have the first people in Upland, one guy said he's going to quit his daytime job just to make money in Upland. It's interesting. One other one just posted that he was able to pay the down payment of his real world house, right, because of Upland. So people are going to earn, some people are going to earn some of their money. And because as we all know, we're not going to have one job in the future. We're going to have 5 or 10 jobs maybe, right? So, and we do stuff on the side in order. And so that's the earn component. And then, I always say, people are going to connect. They're going to, today, the way I think social media is probably going to change also, whether they're going to be here around. I don't know. It's not going to go away completely, to be honest, because you see that still today, you still have TV or radio. It never got, completely, wiped out by the internet. And it's going to be the same for social media, but I think there will be new ways of how people socialize and communicate, right? So for instance, in Upland, we're going to have, it's not introduced yet, but we have that clearly on the roadmap, like virtual coffee shops, right? Where people go and meet with like-minded people, chat and so on. And hopefully, that's a big vision, with less hate and, really good, productive, positive communication.
Awesome. So what advice would you give to a young person, 17-year-old person who has dreams of becoming a successful entrepreneur in this space?
I think just get started, right? Do something small, right? Learn, like I said before, learn and, and it doesn't work, don't stick always to it, maybe move on, right? Build your only micro community around your product. So it depends, when you're an artist, these are also entrepreneurs, share your art, right? If you're a developer, maybe you want to develop on top of an existing platform and want to build an app like, the old days, people were building apps on Apple, right? On iOS. Now in the future, you're going to build an app on top of a metaverse, right? So, try out things. And because especially the young people, when you're 17, you're growing up with devices have been always around with you, right? It's also going to call generation glass one day, I heard, because I always look at the glass, right? Yeah, but embrace it. And because you have one clear advantage. You've been, playing games, understanding, how to interact socially, right, gives you an advantage over, the older generation who doesn't do that. But you can come up with a lot of innovative products here. So I see really lots of opportunity for everyone who is willing, to put some really good thoughts into it.
Great. That about wraps us up. Is there anything else that you want to say on the matter?
No, but I think let's embrace it positive, right? In a way, right? It's we always say at Upland, it's a new land of opportunity, creativity, and diversity, right? This is very important, right? So it's in that when we mainly say that, right? People in Africa will be able to earn money now in the metaverse, which was not possible before, right? And we shouldn't not care about who you are, where you're from. Just we care about what the things you do. Right. And that is, I think, what makes me so optimistic about the future.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, very ideal. Good. Then, very last question. Who would you recommend to have on the Venly Expert Talks next?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think about it. So I think you probably should have some brands, right, who are starting to do something there, right? So maybe someone from the NFLPA or someone from a big car brand. Maybe that's something to get also different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a really good idea. Great. Well, thank you so much for taking your time today. I know it's early for you, and thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.